And welcome to this episode of Brother Nature. You're actually getting a live look out at South Haven. Man, oh man, is it not? It looks a little bit more colder than I suppose it usually is. There is quite a bit of ice, although that's also melting. I think that's a pretty good indication about how things are looking up coming up next week. But that's next week's problem. Today, we're going to do our first ever invasive species spotlight. And here to help me is Erica. Hey, Erica, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Our guests don't know it, but wow, it was a fun, chaotic getting together here. We are looking at specifically Phragmites, which I believe we even have one in studio. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
There we are.
Off the lot here.
Didn't know those had a name.
I know, right? And we actually ripped them outside of the Fox 2 Detroit studio. Erica, I guess let's just start with what are we looking at here?
So Phragmites, it's a wetland plant. It's an invasive one, like you mentioned. So invasive species, they're things that are not native to the area and that they cause some type of harm. So Phragmites, what you typically see is it around, a lake or wetland area. It gets really tall. And typically when you see it, it's pretty much the only thing growing there. So that means it's not allowing really anything else to grow there. So yeah.
Which is kind of the name of the game for all invasive species, right? They pretty much move in, crowd out all the stuff that's normally native there.
Exactly, yeah. So that's what the problem often is from the standpoint of the environment is, that they'll crowd out what normally would be there. So for example, like turtles can't really climb through Phragmites. Phragmites grow so tall and so thick that other plants aren't really going to grow there.
Okay, so interesting. Usually I hear about one invasive plant crowding out another invasive plant, but of course there's a trickle-down effect here that comes from all the biology from the animals and amphibians that also live around these things?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so it really does impact the whole ecosystem and even people. So Phragmites, actually, when it's dry, it can burn really hot. So it's actually kind of dangerous. And people have actually gotten lost in it because it's so tall, they kind of lose their bearings. So there's a lot of different impacts that it can have.
So zoom out for me. This is specifically, we're talking about wetlands. I don't know if Phragmites like to pick anywhere else to live, but I usually see them around those kinds of biomes and environments.
Yeah, so wetlands are the environment that they really excel at being in that area. So Phragmites need some type of water. So you're going to see them in places with water, but it could be just a little bit along the edge of the road to around the outside of a lake.
And of course, with all other invasive species, these guys can they can tolerate all sorts of environments, right?
That's true. Yeah. So unfortunately, that's one of the things that makes them, gives them a competitive advantage over other plants is that, for example, they might start growing soonest in the season and stop growing latest in the season.
And then, is there any indication of just how spread out these things are around Michigan and our Great Lakes?
Yeah, so especially in the southern lower peninsula, they're really common and you might see them just about any road that you might be driving on. As you go north, they're less common. And so in the upper peninsula, for example, they've done a lot of work to manage it there. So there it's more constrained. But yeah, if you're in this part of Southeast Michigan, you'll see it a lot of places.
And I'm going to guess there's probably no percentage, right, of wetlands and how much space these things occupy.
Somebody might have that data, but I don't have it off the top of my head. But yeah, it's definitely had a big impact. So typically areas that are more natural will be more resistant to an invasion of an invasive species. So some areas are a little bit buffered from that, but especially areas that have been disturbed are going to be really susceptible.
Gotcha. You said manage these things. I feel like wetlands are such, courtesy out to them, but they're kind of chaotic, messy places to sort of go into. How would you actually try to control a plant that thrives in these things?
Yeah, it is a challenge. And with Phragmites, part of the problem is as much as you see above the ground, there's actually a lot more of it underneath the ground. So their roots or rhizomes are part of how they spread so easily. But for managing them, there's a couple different ways. So there are some herbicides that can be used to treat it at a certain time of year. And then there's also some methods, for example, cutting them below the water. And if it's enough water, they won't be able to keep growing above the water. So that technique has been really effective when the lake levels were really high.
So drowning them, essentially.
Yep. And they've been able to do that in some areas where they can control the water. So if it's an area where they can hold a certain amount of water in, they've tried that in those situations as well.
Are these herbicides targeted just to Phragmites, or can there be unintended consequences when using those as well?
Typically, they're going to be targeting plants at least. So if they're using it for Phragmites, it's going to be something that's safe around aquatic ecosystems. It could harm other plants. So there's a couple different techniques that people would use. One that's like a broader spraying, and then in really sensitive areas, they might actually cut each individual stalk and treat just each stalk to make sure that there's no side effects.
Just each stalk, but of course these photos show us there's like thousands of these things growing everywhere.
Yeah, so that's definitely a challenge. If you're looking at an area, there's a lot of Phragmites. You kind of want to start from the outside and work your way in. So, or you want to start in areas that are less invaded and move towards the other ones, because there's going to be some areas where it's difficult to control and maybe it's not really having that much of an impact, versus some areas that are really like pristine, really important habitat, and those are the ones that people will concentrate on, keeping that in better shape.
Okay, and really curious, where does Phragmites actually come from?
So it comes from Europe. Actually, we do have a native subspecies in Michigan as well, but that's, if you see it kind of choking out an area, it's going to be the invasive one, not the native one. Yeah, so it came over, we think, in a ship's ballast water.
Ballast water, man. It seems like that's the...
Everything gets over here. Ballast water.
It's I don't know if anybody else outside the Great Lakes knows about what ballast water does to a region, but that is usually the vehicle a lot of this stuff comes over in.
Yeah, so the good news is we've gotten better at controlling that pathway. So there actually are regulations now, and we can see that when they made those regulations, there was a big leveling off of the number of new species that were being introduced. Before that, it was more than one new species per year that was getting established. But since that changed, that has actually made a positive, we're seeing that level off at least.
Okay. And then I'm always just sort of interested, what actually controls the invasive species where it does live?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's kind of a combination of the circumstances that it thrives in. So is it wet enough for Phragmites is pretty much the main one. And then also what else is present there. So like I said, if it's a nice natural ecosystem that's already pretty diverse, it's going to be more resistant to invasion of a new plant, versus if you just dug under a whole bunch of next to your driveway and there's several feet of empty dirt. Those are kind of the situations where an invasive is really likely to take over and thrive.
Gotcha. Okay. And finally, I just got to wonder, is there a biological control like another animal that eats Phragmites?
So not an animal, but they are working on, and they've released in Canada it's something that chews into the stalks. It's like a stem boring moth.
What?
Yeah, so yeah.
That's wild. Okay.
So what they'll do is they'll go to the native range, so in this case Europe, and they'll look for something that only eats that one target plant, which is tricky because of course a lot of things will eat multiple species. But in this case they did find one, and there's 2 different stem boring moths that they've released in Canada. And they're still kind of studying how that's going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
How do you track a moth?
with a little moth tracker, maybe. Eric Kleitz, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, be on the lookout for Phragmites, though I'm pretty sure you won't have to go too far to find them. It seems like there's everywhere. Cool. All right, coming up next, we will actually take a closer look at a different sort of wetland invasive species and one of the clever little solutions we've discovered about what to do with it. Stay here for more. And welcome back to Brother Nature. So we just had a nice in-depth conversation about Phragmites, but it is not the only invasive plant that seems to be eating up our wetlands right now. We also have hybrid cattails and European frogbit, which is really no shortage of issues that these environments have to deal with. But curiously enough, I spoke to a professor, or rather a researcher down at Loyola University in Chicago, Shane Ishua. He is a senior research associate, and he found out a pretty interesting solution. Take a look.
So muskrats are, a native, a semi-aquatic mammal to this region, to North America. They're kind of considered a lowly creature. People don't like have a lot of respect for muskrats, in general. And their kind of role, they're pests. They're commonly cause issues with like dikes. They'll burrow into them and they can cause erosion problems. I've heard stories of them like swimming up in getting at the antifreeze in like pontoon boats and causing all kinds of problems. And anyway, so muskrats have been maligned, I would say, because of that. But like, especially if you talk to, Native Americans, there's this long kind of history of kind of appreciation of the role they play in ecosystems, specifically in marsh ecosystems.
I mean, these sound like foundational agents for biodiversity then.
Yes. Yes, that's a good way to summarize what I said in 3,000 words. Essentially, they feed on a wide variety of vegetation. They eat basically everything that grows. They're all kinds of plants that grow in these systems, and they're also active all winter. So they're eating all winter long, and as herbivores, they're just recycling a lot of nutrients, and they're reducing the dominance of native and invasive plants. So that's kind of running through my mind when I look at like a system that has a moderate amount of muskrats. They're creating conditions that are really useful for birds and fish and all aquatic macroinvertebrates, all these other organisms that use these systems. The idea for this study was in part inspired by conversations we were having about muskrat and its role in these ecosystems with our tribal partners. What we were attempting to do in the muskrat study was to evaluate the effects of muskrat openings on plant communities and some environmental variables in a wetland. So we set up an experiment, we randomized our locations, and we started quantifying what effect the muskrats were having on the cattail or on the plant communities and on the ecosystem.
I wanted to ask about why you guys chose, pronounce the site that you guys used.
Oh, yeah, Muskong.
Why the Muskong?
That's a site that has a long history of cattail invasion, cattail population, and it also has a lot of extant, like high quality habitat. So it's a really rich site. There's a lot of fish. There's a lot of bird use. It's a pretty spectacular site in that, especially its vastness. Like outside of the Everglades or something, like I feel like you don't get into a wetland that feels that big in the Great Lakes. So what we did in our analysis is we compared the control locations to the muskrat openings, and we found that compared to those controls, there was a 70+% decrease in both cattail and European frogbit cover. And that is important because those are these invasive plants that are causing all of these, impacts to biodiversity and ecological functioning. So cattails are the primary food source for muskrats. It's like pretty well known that they eat a lot of cattails. Like that wasn't really breaking a lot of new ground. But the frogbit effect was a new finding, and I think it's encouraging because European frogbit's a relatively new invasive plant to the Great Lakes region, especially compared to something like cattail or Phragmites. And we still don't know what all the effects of its invasion are going to be on ecosystems.
It also seems like a pretty positive development because I think about trying to control an invasive plant in a setting like a wetland and knowing that even a targeted herbicide is still going to have maybe unintended consequences on everything else living there, since it's such a rich ecosystem of plant and bird and
whatever kind of life.
It's just nature doing what nature does, right? Like muskrats are utilizing this resource, most likely eating the frog bit, as well as the cattail. And they came up with it on their own. So that is really kind of great.
A fun anecdote about that research paper. So Shane actually detailed the myth that muskrats and the Great Lakes Ojibwe tribes actually have. Turns out they're part of the creation myth that they sort of talked about forever. After the Great Flood, a muskrat retrieved a little ball of earth and perished in the process. That little ball, this is according to the myth, became North America. And every single time, basically, they build a lodge, that is sort of a testament to the muskrat's contribution and sort of its kind of reclamation and sort of assistance in making sure that our marshland and our ecosystem is really, really healthy. You don't find that in a whole lot of research articles. Big shout out to him for making some of the typically not always the most interesting stuff really fascinating. All right, coming up after the break, we're going to do something a whole lot different than before. Say hi, Eric.
Hello.
That's coming up after the break. I'm not telling you yet what it is. Welcome back to Brother Nature. We are live with Eric Lund. Hey, man.
Hey.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
You actually maintain a different position than necessarily guest or reporter in the newsroom. What
Yes.
do you do real quick?
I am one of the engineers / maintenance people in the building.
Okay, and apparently quite the shoe buff as well.
Boots.
Boots. I keep saying it wrong. It's boots.
These are boots.
Let's start with, why do you like boots so much?
Well, I kind of got into heritage wear in general, and then I started thinking about buying clothing or footwear that's going to last a really long time. And this is the footwear that's going to last you a long time. There are boots in here that you can be buried in, or you can pass them on to your next generation.
And for Brother Nature purposes, you can also take them out into nature.
Yes.
They will handle, hopefully, most environments, I assume?
Yes, and some are suited for different environments and different uses, and we're going to explain some of that here.
Let's kick it off then.
All right, we're going to start with a classic. These are Red Wing Iron Rangers with the amber harness. 8111 is the model number. Now, if you don't know, Red Wings are made here in America. They started this boot, the original, its ancestor, was introduced in 1930, and they relaunched it in 2000. And you have the double leather toe cap. You have the nice smooth leather. It's full grain leather, and that's important when you're looking in a boot. You want full grain leather. That's very important. You also have a very robust heel, and there's a cork midsole. And now what that does is that conforms to your foot the more you wear it. So it incentivizes you to wear this boot. And as you can see here, you have the Goodyear welt. Now that's very important when boot construction, because if you buy an ordinary pair of boots, maybe at a big box store or something, they just glue it on with adhesive, and those don't last very long. But this is stitched down. There's a piece of rubber, and they stitch that in with the leather to the sole, so it stays, and it does some really great wonders with waterproofing. It also makes this boot easy to resole, so when it runs off,
Show the camera down here.
So when this, when this gets all, flat and everything and doesn't have any grip anymore, you can get new soles, and there's so many. And what you're going to want to look for soles is the Vibram label. Those are the standard. Though there might be better ones, but this is what you want, and they have so many different models to choose from for your boots. Now we have other boots here, and these are good all around. You can wear them outside, you can wear them to the office, wherever. You can wear them out. Now another great boot here, these are JKs. These are the OT Bison. This is made with bison leather, and these are a stitch down boot. And what they mean by that is that they pull the leather over the sole, and now they've double stitched it. As you can see here, they've double stitched it. Also great for waterproofing, and it's very similar to this Goodyear welt. It's a little more difficult to replace your sole, but it can be done. It takes a little more labor, but it can be just the same, and you can get any sort of sole you want once this runs out.
So real quick, how waterproof is it?
It's, let's say, water resistant.
Water
Like
resistant,
you're not
okay.
if you go through a river or if you're out getting Phragmites and you're pulling it out of
Yes.
the pond or whatever,
Yes.
your feet will stay kind of dry, but you can't keep them submerged for too long.
Okay.
Another great thing about these boots, because they're from JK and they have a lot of logging history to them and firefighting history, that these are fire resistant up to 900 degrees. So if you're out camping or something and you got to stomp out your campfire or something, you can feel good doing it with these.
All right, let's break it up now. You have a couple of other non-shoe, well, shoe-related for sure.
Boots.
Boot-related devices. Tell us about what you got here.
Okay. These can also work for shoes. Now, laces are a big deal. As you can see, these are leather, and you have these paracord laces with the nice metal aglet. You could spend $12, $15 on those and then wait for them to be shipped. I don't got time for that. You can get a crimping tool. You can get metal aglets. And of course, you can get a variety of colors in paracord. There's way more than this. So many different colors. It's simple. You put the lace with it, the aglet, you crimp it, and you got laces. You can make laces all day. You don't have to order more or whatever. It's a great little option to have, a do-it-yourself project. And then you can change the colors or whatever.
It really fits your style then.
Yes.
I have no idea. Is a crimping tool, you can find that at any Ace Hardware, I'm guessing?
That online thing that's named after a big river, you can get it there.
Yes, yes. Moving on, what other shoes do you have available?
Now, these are really interesting. Now, I'm a proponent of buying made in America. These are made in America. Almost all of these are made in America or owned by an American company. The Grant Stones are also from Michigan, though they have factories in China. These are Professor Barnett's. And I don't know a lot about these because I bought them on eBay. eBay, great resource to buy boots, especially if you're looking to get used, because some of these, they're a little pricey, I'm not gonna lie. Like these right here, these are gonna set you back $330. But that's a good entry point if you want a quality boot.
We got about 15 seconds left, Eric.
Okay.
One more thing, one more boot.
These are the holy grail of boots. These are probably the best boot you could probably buy. These are Russell moccasin backcountries. This design has been around since the early 1900s. The leather in this, you have almost a pound of leather. It is a moccasin build, and what that means is they pull the leather up and then they stitch the top on it, so there's no way water can get in. And in fact, there's 2 layers, so they're double water resistant. And there's 2 pairs of these in the Smithsonian. First, the first person to walk the Appalachian Trail and the first person to circumnavigate the globe in a plane. Their boots, which are these, are in the Smithsonian. So you are walking in history with these.
I bet you never knew what you were about to learn was just right there. Eric Lund, thank you so much.
Yes.
And this is everything we've had for Brother Nature this week. I can't wait to join you guys next week as well. See you then.